This time I am going to explain a movie called Digging to Death, released in year 2021. Spoiler is on the way. David Van Owen is moving to a new, run-down house. He drives in and is greeted by his daughter Jessica Van Owen. They excitedly check out the rest of the house. But while Jessica is going through the kitchen, David stumbles upon a closet within another closet and finds $100 on the floor, with which they decide to buy some Chinese takeout as dinner, while they dine using a cardboard box as a table. David thanks Jessica for the help and plans what to do next with the house. Jessica tells her dad that she's going out with a Harvey's store manager named Zach Kennedy. They chat about their life a bit and David tells her daughter that he's probably going to get a promotion soon. Jessica tells her dad that she'll have some troubles paying for her medical bills from next month and he offers her that he'll pay for them when he gets his new job. They say goodbye to each other and Jessica leaves to go back home. While driving in her car, she calls her boyfriend Zach and tells him about his dad. In her mind, David's divorce is taking a toll on him, as he's acting in a weird and unnatural way. The next morning, David is woken up by Alan Palms, his landscaper, who came in early to check on what he'll have to work on. David shows him a couple of spots he needs adjusted and tells him that he'll take care of his own septic system since that's one of the only things he and his dad did together back in the day. As soon as Alan's gone, David receives a call from his friend Mark, who tells him that he's coming over with some beers. Mark and David sit near the pool and relax a bit. David tells Mark that his toilets are a mess and that he'll need to work on his septic system. Mark asks him if he shouldn't just hire somebody to do the job, but David responds by saying that it's not that expensive or difficult of a job and that it's pretty much the only thing he knows how to do. They talk about David's possible promotion and, after a bit of chatting, Mark leaves, leaving David to his plumbing. While digging with a shovel, David finds a giant wooden box. He opens it and finds inside a pile of banknotes and a corpse, dressed in a suit. He takes some money out of the box, goes inside, marks some banknotes with a highlighter, and talks to himself in shock while washing his face. During the night, David wakes up and hears some ominous noises. After failing to go back to sleep, he goes down to check on the noise but finds nothing. The next morning, David goes to work. After sitting in his cubicle, he gets approached by his colleague Richard, who's overconfident about getting promoted to project manager. After telling Richard to leave him alone, David gets approached by his boss, Mr. Wu, who invites him to a walk after telling him that his team has done an incredible job. Mr. Wu shows him the project manager's office and promises him that it will be his new view from then on. David is ecstatic about this. He then asks to leave the office early to go to the bank, since he has to solve an account discrepancy. At the bank, an accountant asks David if he has to deposit an inheritance of $2 million in cash. After some babbling, David is told by the accountant that depositing such a large sum in cash with little to no documentation about it will surely alert the government and people would start asking questions. The two talk some more about the situation. David, who's now tending to his garden, can't stop thinking about his situation. He can't hold himself and gets out all the money from the box. The total amounts to a little less than $4 million. He stashes it in a closet, closes it, and goes to shave. In the bathroom, he talks to himself and hallucinates that his reflection is answering his questions. During the night, he hears some weird noises again. He grabs a baseball bat and checks the house for any intruders. Every room appears to be void of any danger. But when he checks his back door, it is unlocked. After making sure that nobody was lurking in his garden, he goes back inside and drinks some tea. While he's taking a sip, he hears something outside and leaves to check it. While he's standing on his front door, mug in hand, he's spooked by a cat and drops the mug on the floor. Relieved, he goes back inside and checks on his money, but finds it intact. While he's walking back to his bed, he sees an old, emaciated man in a suit standing in front of his window. He runs out and checks his garden, but can't find anybody. The box, though, had not been buried back by David and was exposed to the surface. He opens it to check the corpse inside, but finds it there, still dead. The next morning, he wakes up and sees that he's still all dirty from the day before. He gets ready, makes some breakfast, and leaves for work. In the office, he gets approached by Mr. Wu, who tells him that to get his promotion his team has to put out an update in less time than previously agreed upon. David is worried that he won't make it but tells Mr. Wu that he'll get straight to work. Richard teases him with a Nerf gun. After work, he gets some food with Mark. The two talk a bit and Mark notices that David is not looking too good. He advises him to relax, but David leaves in frustration. When he gets back home, David notices some black footprints on his floor. He checks to see if it was him who left them but finds out it wasn't him. He goes to check the money and sees that everything is still there. Jessica is hanging out with her boyfriend. She suddenly receives a call from her dad who tells her to come right away. When she arrives, initially he wants to tell her about the money and the corpse, but then decides to just tell her that he's got a new job to do and that he's just anxious about it. Jessica tells him that she now has to go, and they talk about meeting on Sunday so that he can get to meet Zach. Back home, David checks on the money again and then clears the footprints off the floor. He gets ready to sleep and gets spooked by his suit hanging on a window. While looking outside the window, though, he spots a man walking in his garden. So he grabs a knife and gets ready to confront him. David goes outside, but can't find him. He gets back inside and starts putting all his money in a bag to bury it again. He uncovers the wooden box and puts the bag inside it and seals the whole thing shut with some nails. The next morning at work, he's still thinking about the previous night, but is snapped back to reality by an unsatisfied Mr. Wu, who checks on David's still unfinished project. After speaking to Mr. Wu, David leaves the office in a hurry and goes back home. There, he tries to break open the closet but is interrupted by Alan, who tells him that he'll bring some dirt and gravel on Friday at noon. After ending the call, he goes back outside and opens the wooden box once more. He looks for the corpse's wallet and finds it. That night, David has a nightmare about being attacked by the corpse. In the morning, he calls in sick to work and leaves to buy some hardware supplies and tools. At home, he installs a lot of lights and cameras around his house, connecting them all to his computer. He goes outside, tests the lights, and goes back inside to try and open the closet again. He manages to do it this time and finds a staircase that brings down to a basement. He goes down the stairs and looks around, finding a lot of corpses wrapped in plastic. At first, he dials 911, but then puts down the phone. During the night, the cameras show a man in David's backyard and all the alarms go off. David wakes up to check who it is. But before he can see anybody, a storm causes a power surge and everything turns off. When the power comes back on, David sees that the man has made his way to his bedroom door and starts banging on it with his head. He looks in horror as the man shows his face to the camera and is revealed to be the corpse inside the box. The undead corpse then makes his way down the stairs and out of the house while David grabs a baseball bat and runs outside to fight him. As soon as he steps outside, though, David accidentally steps on the remains of the mug he dropped some days prior and cuts his naked foot. He drops to the floor, screaming in the pain, but then gets up and keeps chasing the man. He opens the wooden box and sees that the corpse is still there. David starts to scream at the body, telling it to stop messing with him. In desperation, he screams into the sky and then falls asleep on the ground. The next morning, he wakes back up on top of the corpse. He immediately stands up and checks his watch. Noticing he's late for work, he gets ready and gets into the car. But as he's driving away, he sees the undead corpse back on his feet, looking at him. David gets out of his car and chases the corpse, but it gets inside its wooden box again and is now unresponsive and dead. David starts screaming again at the body. He goes back inside, grabs a chainsaw, and cuts the corpse's leg off, but it remains dead and unresponsive. David then goes to the office still covered in blood and stinking. He argues with Mr. Wu, who fires him in front of every coworker. David is forcefully brought outside by security as Mr. Wu watches in anger. Out of his mind, David throws his bloody and dirty suit in a trash bin and drives back home. In the car, he speaks to himself, getting more and more erratic. When he gets home, all naked and wet, he sees his landscaper Alan. He approaches him while he's about to call 911. In anger, David hits him on the head with a hammer and then kills him. David then panics and brings the corpse inside the closet with the other ones. He brings Alan's truck to his garage, eats something, and cleans himself. David hallucinates again while looking at his reflection. Mark calls him on the phone, but he doesn't respond. David finally goes to sleep. During the night, he's woken up yet another time by an alarm. He sees another man through the cameras and goes down the stairs to kill him. When he's in his kitchen, he sees that it's his friend Mark, but still brutally murders him with an electric drill. After he's killed his best friend, David stashes his body in the closet. He hears his kettle whistling and goes back up to have his tea. David goes back outside to get his money. He takes the bag from the wooden coffin and brings it inside. After, he showers and erratically goes through his stuff, counting his money and looking outside the window like the maniac he has become. He pretends to be playing checkers with the bag of money, but then snaps and throws the board across the room. Then, he watches a movie together with his bag of money and falls asleep. He's waken up by his doorbell. Zach, Jessica's boyfriend, is at the door. David goes out and then bashes him in the head multiple times with his baseball bat. Still alive, David ties him up in a plastic bag. Jessica arrives and asks about Zach. David leads her daughter downstairs to the basement, telling her that Zach is there. Jessica sees all the corpses wrapped in plastic and sees Zach wrapped in his plastic bag still moving. Then, David hits her daughter on the head and she blacks out. She wakes up, tied up to a pole in the basement. David tells her that she's there to take his money and points a knife at her, asking when the others will come. Jessica cries and completely freaks out. David tells her that he's so sorry and that he knows how to fix this. He then leaves the basement, leaving her alone. He goes back up and gets dressed up, keeping Jessica and Zach in her basement. While he's tying his tie in the bathroom, he holds a speech for himself in the mirror, grabs his bag of money, brings it outside, and douses all the money with gasoline. In the meantime, Jessica is trying to grab the keys to the chain tying her up with her feet but fails to do so. Zach runs out of oxygen and stops struggling. David can't bring himself to burn the money, so he just lays in the wooden coffin next to them and closes the lid. Thanks for watching. Bye.